Good afternoon everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
So my name's Kevin Vaughan and I'm the Head of Health and Social Care at Voluntary Norfolk, and as part of that I'm Head of Service for Carers Matter, the support service for unpaid carers in the county, but also Head of Service for Better Together, which is one of the 3 new services commissioned by Norfolk County Council to combat loneliness and social isolation, and that's what I've come to talk to you about today. As I'm sure many of you will be aware from the work that you do with the clients that you support, loneliness and social isolation is becoming increasingly a big social issue nationally that we've become much more aware of in recent years. We had the launch a couple of years ago of the Jo Cox Commission on Loneliness, the MP who was tragically killed in her constituency, but we've also got the Campaign to End Loneliness, which is a national movement, and the government earlier this year published a strategy for combating loneliness, and which was interdepartmental government level. So it's becoming a big issue at both national, regional and at local level. And as a consequence, Norfolk County Council became the first local authority to commission dedicated services to combat loneliness and social isolation. They took the view that demand on social care was in part being driven by loneliness and social isolation, and certainly if you tackle the wider determinants, there does appear to be a link between promoting independence and reducing isolation and loneliness. So there are 3 services in the county. I lead Better Together, which covers the South Norfolk, Norwich and Great Yarmouth clinical commissioning, NHS clinical commissioning group areas. Community Action Norfolk leads a service in North Norfolk called Can Connect, which we also take phone calls for, and the Borough Council in West Norfolk, Kings Lynn, leads a service called Lily, which was originally living later years, but it's been expanded to cover 18 plus. Yeah. So those are the 3 services. They're all a bit different, but there are some similar elements. And whilst we are focused on supporting people to remain independent in the community, so more likely to be the people who are being supported by domiciliary care, we are also very interested in creating links between care homes and communities and fostering intergenerational work. Because we are concerned as well about the loneliness of people who are residents in care homes, and also the ability to improve outcomes for residents by linking them in to the community and bringing the community in. So the services have been commissioned for 3 years, and we have for the 3 for South Norfolk, Great Yarmouth and Norwich, but also North Norfolk, we have because we share a helpline with Can Connect as well. So for those 4 areas there is a free phone helpline that both individuals can call, but also professionals if you have concerns about clients, people you know who might be at risk of social isolation and loneliness. We can provide information, advice and guidance and help connect people to the right resources to help alleviate the loneliness or social isolation. So sadly it's only open Monday to Friday 9 to 5 at the moment, but I'm plan to try and change that, because loneliness and social isolation doesn't start at 9 o'clock on Monday morning and ends at 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon. But we also have a team of, all these 3 services have a team of life connectors. As you probably picked up, there's a lot of connectors in the system. We've got life connectors, care connectors, living well connectors for social prescribing. We're just collecting connectors, but for the social isolation and loneliness services, we've got life connectors, and their role is to provide one-to-one support to people who are either lonely or social isolated or at risk of being so. and they can provide support planning, information, advice, guidance, support. They can help take people to activities in their community. They can help link them to social activities, events, organisations. They can help people to look at what the root causes and those wider determinants of social isolation and loneliness. It's very broad. It's anyone aged 18 plus who may be at risk of loneliness and social isolation. So as you can imagine, we've had an influx of all sorts, quite a lot of high level mental health issues where there isn't support elsewhere. But if they need advice around issues like transport, health and care, housing issues, money, because often issues around debt can cause issues around loneliness and social isolation. People can be isolated in rural Norfolk because of transport issues. Housing can be a huge issue around creating isolation for people, and obviously people's economic well-being is also another determinant of loneliness and social isolation. And we're dealing with people who've got, they might have disability or illness, with parents can be at risk of loneliness and social isolation. It may not even be the person you're delivering a service to. It may not be the person accessing domiciliary care or your resident. It may actually be their family that are experiencing loneliness and social isolation, and you may pick up on that. We also deal with a lot of people, obviously, who move into Norfolk, who retire here and don't necessarily have those links, aren't rooted in the community, don't have those family links, often become unwell, develop various issues, and then find themselves quite isolated. So that's so we often deal with that type of person in a county like Norfolk. We can also provide support around, we often find that sort of family issues can be can cause isolation and loneliness in people. So although we're not a specialist mediation service, we do a bit of conflict resolution as well. And in addition to our one-to-one support service and the information advice we provide through our helpline, we also have a team of community development workers, and they're especially keen to work with residential care nursing providers in terms of looking at those links into the wider community. And their role really is to try and work with local people in the community to initiate social action to combat loneliness and social isolation, to support initiatives, activities, organisations that are trying to make the local area a more inclusive place. We do have some grants, some social action grants, which again providers may want to consider applying. So if you, for instance, as a residential care provider, wanted to open up your home and have a sort of coffee morning where you invited the community in, that's potentially something you could apply to receive some funding from us through our social action grants. Again, you may also want to talk to one of our community development workers or life connectors about activities that residents could access in the local community, because they're very well hooked into what is going on. In addition to that, we have a range of other partners providing quite specific services and activities. So in Norwich, we're working with the Kinder Cafe, which is a social enterprise around developing a whole range of groups and activities for people in the city, on the main bus route, on Castle Meadow. We're also working with St Martin's Housing to reach people who are homeless, or those move on tenancy, where often loneliness and social isolation sets in. We're looking at trying to provide some rural community transport in rural Breckland and in the northern and southern parishes of Great Yarmouth, where transport is a major issue, barrier to people becoming involved in their local activities. So it's a whole range of different support and services, but we're very keen to work with the care market. We think the care market has a big role to play in supporting the 40,000 plus people in Norfolk who are supposed to be lonely and socially isolated. I'm very happy